Hello and welcome to the conversation right here on News Central TV. This is a program that keeps you up to speed on political happenings around the African continent. I am Rita Omodia. Now, today on the conversation, I will be discussing with my guest the state of emergency in North Kivu, Ituri, which has come under scrutiny amid rising attacks. Also, we'll look at the latest in Nigeria as regards security as Nigeria's Senate passes bill to bar kidnap ransom payments. Now we begin with our first topic, where the state of emergency imposed in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, has come under scrutiny and debate. It comes as more than 2,500 civilians have reportedly been killed in two eastern provinces under siege, nearly double the number killed a year earlier. Prime Minister Jean-Michel Sama Lukonde, in an interview on Tuesday, said the state of siege and the army's operations have made it possible to reduce the area of action of the negative forces. But elected officials are angry and the measure is increasingly being debated. Meanwhile, the Congolese presidency said on Thursday that the first round of peace talks to end one of the world's worst and longest-running humanitarian emergencies had concluded. Unfortunately, some armed groups snubbed the Nairobi talks. Others could not attend for logistical reasons. Most notably absent was the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, which operates near the border of the Eastern Congo and Uganda. More than 27 million people face food shortages and nearly 5.5 million have been displaced in Eastern DR Congo, according to the United Nations. Now, joining us to discuss this, I have Patrick Kadima, Sessional lecturer and a research fellow at Wits University, Johannesburg, South Africa. It's good to have you join us on the conversation at this time.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers.
Thank you, Patrick. So the situation in DR Congo is quite worrisome, and we know that the Congolese president, Felix Tshisekedi, sought to avoid more crisis by imposing a martial law in the provinces of North Kivu and Ituri on May 6, 2021. What has been the impact of this martial law in those eastern provinces?
Just before I answer your question, just to give a brief highlight is, a state of emergency when invoked by any government is to try to contain any situation, whether civil unrest or armed conflict. But as we have seen since the Democratic Republic of Congo's government invoked that state of emergency or the state of siege, since 6 May 2021 in those specific regions, what we have seen is that the government has failed to contain these armed groups. And, this violence has now gone out of hand. As we've seen in the past few weeks, there were clashes between armed groups and government and the army belonging to the DRC government. And what we have seen is that people have started fleeing their places and have started running to neighboring countries such as Uganda. So I think the impact of this state of emergency is that it has simply failed, and there is a need now for a new approach to solving the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And this new approach should not be only a national approach. It should involve neighboring countries, because these rebel groups are operating in a vast area in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and it affects also neighbors. So there is a need for the Democratic Republic of Congo to engage its neighbors, as we have seen the East African community that started the dialogue with member states to see how to solve the issue in the DRC.
Okay, Patrick, you talked about the fact that this state of emergency, that despite this, that there's still been increased attacks in DRC. Why do you think this is so? What's the reason behind this? Do you think the government has lacked the political will to deal with these rebels?
Lack political will, maybe, but also these rebels are operating in a different type of realm, if I can put it like that. So what happens is that they are highly skilled. They are working with the community, some community members. They have knowledge of the community. The government itself probably does not have the resources to keep up with what the rebels are using, because we have seen, and studies have shown that the rebels sometimes are using, these high level ammunition sometimes that the government does not have, and so on and so forth. And here we are with probably a government that is ruling a vast majority, a very large population in a country where resources are tight, and it's not only the peace, the conflict situation in the east. There's also healthcare issues such as Ebola, and so budget is constrained, and one can understand that you might find that the army does not have enough resources to fight these rebels. I mean, there are more than 120 rebel groups operating in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and therefore, to fight that does not, it will not be solved by unfortunately, the Congolese government only. It will need help from its regional neighbors to help solve the issue, And I must say that the East African dialogue might bring optimism, but we should not be that optimistic because we have seen the United Nations peacekeeping mission has been there for many years, but things have not changed. The Democratic Republic of Congo was part of SADC. SADC has been holding talks on the Democratic Republic of Congo, but things have not been happening. But we are seeing we have now started to see that the East African community that the Democratic Republic of Congo just joined has shown has developed a new way of trying to deal with the solution, bringing different parties and bringing rebel groups, even to a point where sponsoring rebel groups. Kenya said they were going to sponsor rebel groups, their flight, their accommodations, and so on and so forth in Nairobi. So we are starting to see a new approach to trying to solve the issue.
Okay, talking about this intervened by the East African community, I know that recently the African Union Commission, that's Musa Faki, has actually also endorsed the fact that, okay, they're going to send in troops to the DR Congo. But also in that meeting that they had, we saw that some rebel groups actually did not attend. Don't you see that as probably a red light to the fact that that meeting or whatever coalition they're trying to do will not necessarily see the light of day? What do you think?
Yeah, you're correct. There's a certain angle to that, but there's also what I believe I believe that the East African community's approach can try to work because, look, the East African community realizes that the need for peace and stability in their region lies in making sure that the Congolese and the Congolese government need to ensure stability in their country, in the eastern part. And now they are trying to solve this through dialogue first. And we have seen what they've said. And, it's very clear the East African community, in fact, Article 124 of the East African Community Charter states that they will first try to use dialogue into trying to solve or to create an atmosphere of peace in the region. And they've started with that. And as we have seen, one of the communiques from the region was that after the peace dialogue, that any rebel group that does not want to attend these dialogues will be seen as a negative force, and there might be a use of the East African community regional force to intervene and fight those rebels in the east of the Congo. So there is that there's that angle, but there's also the angle that that is really surprising, that the East African community, is warning these rebels that they will use, force if some of them do not attend.
Yeah.
But it's not just waking up in the morning, and saying, okay, nation state, member state, let us organize troops and go into the Congo. Into the Congo, as I've mentioned earlier, those rebel groups, those armed groups are working they're very skilled. They're working in a vast region where there's forest and so on and so forth within borders, and they do understand the area they're working in. So it will need a regional, peacekeeping force or regional force that when it's going there, they know what they're going to do, they know what the strategy is, and it's not just a matter of sending forces like that, So I think the dialogue is the beginning, is the first step. Not everyone is going to come in. There are other rounds of talks that will take place as I hear. So there are other opportunities for other rebel groups to come to the table before force can be used. Because I think sometimes before, we are quick to use force, but I think dialogue should work first and try to see if there is no way unity can, there's no way unity can be brought between the government and these rebel groups. And just to say one more thing, the East African community also realizes that Congo is a country that has potential to bring economic prosperity to the region. It also realizes that the Democratic Republic of Congo, for example, has one of the how am I going to put it? One of as power to power the region, in terms of electricity, as we have seen issues of clean energy and so on and so forth. And with the Congo River and hydropower, the Congo is a center for that. So they do realize that they cannot move with economic prosperity if there is no peace and stability in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I think for the East African region, for them it's priority. And I think they are trying to take from ECOWAS, as we have seen ECOWAS has been commended for trying to always being in front of stabilizing in terms of coup and civil unrest in the region. So I think the East African community is also trying to do that.
Okay, while you're commending the East African community's efforts in trying to forestall the situation going on in DR Congo, there's something you mentioned about the rebels working with the community, which is kind of like more of an unconventional war where authorities are kind of finding it difficult to distinguish between the community members and the armed rebels. Now, do you think the military government actually has the support of the people, the local community? Because we know that local cooperation is key in ending insurgencies.
It's very difficult to say at the moment because these rebels, the way they're operating, as I've said, they work with the community and so on and so forth. And, with whatever they are giving the community, some community members to work with them is probably what the government cannot give. They cannot distinguish, probably because no in-depth study has been done to analyze what is really happening in terms of the community working with the rebels. And I mean, this happens also in certain parts of countries where we have read where gang, it's similar to what gangsters have been doing, where where they're operating in certain communities and feeding them, giving them food kitchens, and you expect a certain government to fight these gang members when these gang members are actually serving the community, giving them food that they cannot have, and so on and so forth. So it's really difficult, and I believe that the Democratic Republic of Congo government needs to really do an in-depth study to understand what is really happening, in the eastern part, and how are these people working with community members, who will probably inform them that the military are here, they're hiding here, they are doing this and that, so to just alert them, So I think there is a need for the government to do an in-depth study.
Okay, still looking at the way forward now, we know that there's been recent scrutiny. Of course, you've also talked about it on the state of emergency imposed in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, with this persistent insecurity and, of course, the extension of the martial law over and over again in DRC, do you think this will have any effect on the election schedule for 2023?
Yeah, so it's on one hand, probably the government or government officials believe that their state of emergency is working, and it's working for them, and probably the public approves of it. But as the Congo is a very big country, and there's a lot of political parties, that are in parliament, and some that are disapproving of it, and probably they are using these 4 elections to probably, alert the public that they are trying to do what they can in their power to solve the issue. But like I've mentioned, you can invoke a state of emergency, but if you do not have the military capability, if you do not have the political will to try to solve the issue, then you are not going to win that. You are not going to win. It's just going to be a state of emergency on paper. And the first and foremost solution for the DR Congo government is not just to invoke on paper a state of emergency, is to invoke a state of emergency on paper, yes, but in a democratic way, but to also equip the military with the necessary equipment, personnel to fight, because it's not a secret, and studies have shown, research has shown that the DRC military does not have that capability to fight the rebels alone. So um, it's going to seriously have an effect on the president if the state of emergency, when going, because they are now going towards the election, if the state of emergency keeps on being invoked, being extended, but there is no solution and people being killed, then people will try to
So
say,
in other words,
probably, yes,
Patrick, there's a possibility that the 2023 elections might be postponed if this continues.
yes, there's a possibility of that. There is a possibility of that if these clashes continue and the state of emergency continues to be invoked, the government might try to postpone the elections, saying that they're citing political instability in the country.
Okay, now the conflict in DRC's eastern region is decades old, which you know, and involves as many as 130 armed groups battling over a complex array of issues, including land and natural resources. You talk about the government doing so much to meet insecurity in the board, but do you think the government has dealt with the root causes of the conflict?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think the government has dealt with the root causes of the conflict, and I think it's a very complex war, to be honest. There are different studies, research that have been done by different academics, by different security experts, and all come to, most of them, let me not say all, most of them have come to the conclusion that the issue of the Congolese instability in the east is very complex, and it even goes back years back, and therefore what is needed is it involves also businesses, multinational corporations. As we have seen, there's a new field now. There's a field that is re-emerging in the legal fraternity, where they are trying to see how can corporations be sued for being involved in these wars. Because there are a lot of interest there, and the interests will not finish anytime soon. But the question is, the Congolese government needs to get to the root causes of the conflict. There's also tribal issues, and that is a very serious issue in the Democratic Republic of Congo that needs to be solved if they are to get to the root causes of the conflict and solving that conflict. Because without understanding the root causes of any conflict, you cannot solve it. Whatever dialogue you can hold, whether in the east, in the west, in the south, or in the north of Africa, it's not going to work. And I think that's also what the UN peacekeeping mission has also failed to do. They have the largest peacekeeping mission in the Congo, but I think their peacekeeping mission has failed, and it has only served to worsen the situation in the country. And there is a need for all parties now, member states of different regions, regional blocks, to sit down and try to understand what really is the root causes. It's not only land. Is it tribal? Is it, as you have mentioned, the natural resources? How can they solve those issues?
Okay, Patrick, while we're still looking at collaboration in ending this dispute and crisis going on in DR Congo, which has lasted for several decades, we also commended the African Union. But what role has international organization played so far in ending this dispute?
Sorry?
I said, what role has international organizations played so far in ending this crisis?
So, look, for example, the UN that has been there, I think they have tried their best, and unfortunately their methods have failed. And hence we've seen them sitting in the commending now the East African Community Plan. And they have tried, but we have seen, and over the years, large budgets have been poured into that, but it has, like I've highlighted, only worsened situations, and therefore, I think, hence they went to Nairobi to try to understand what is happening, and to try to support that new plan. And I think it's just a symbol. Yes, it's a symbol of solidarity, but it's also a symbol that there were no other options from other international organizations such as the UN, and therefore they thought that maybe joining this plan and supporting it can yield peaceful solutions. So I think they will need to work with the East African community and to try to establish peace. But I think on their own, they have realized that this conflict has really gone too much, and it will need collaboration with other member states from which the Congo is part of.
Okay, Patrick. Now, according to the Human Rights Watch, it has said it has documented more than 2,000 cases of arbitrary arrest, intimidation, beatings, and abusive prosecutions in Ituri and North Kivu since September, when this martial law was put in place. What has been done to curb these illegal intrusions, especially on people?
So in terms of the situation of human rights, first,
Yeah.
I would like just to highlight that it's very important that the dignity of the civilians is withheld. The human rights of civilians are respected in the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially the women and the children that are there. And the abuse that has stemmed from this is really shocking. And as human rights watchdogs have stated, there is a need that this comes to an end. But as I have highlighted, there is, if the army and the police force is unable and is not equipped to deal with these things, how are they going to end these human rights atrocities? And I mean, the human rights atrocities done in the Congo, unfortunately, has not been by rebel groups only. We have heard stories where it has been done by, army officials. It has been done by UN peacekeeping officials. I mean, in terms of the soldiers, So this is really terrible, and so it's really terrible, and there's a need that both parties, whether it's the armed groups, whether it's the government, whether it's regional blocs, they need to put serious rules in terms of their soldiers to stop these, violence, these issues of rape that is happening in the East.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick Kadima, for joining us and discussing the situation going on in DR Congo. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now we've been discussing situations in DR Congo. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we move to West Africa and Nigeria. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. Now, on the first half of the conversation, we talked about situations in DR Congo where the crisis has gone on for more than a decade, and yet there's still no way forward. And now there's been scrutiny among the residents in DR Congo and, of course, members of parliament, especially as a state of emergency has been imposed in the eastern province of DR Congo, that's in North Kivu and Ituri province, since September 2021. But yet we still have crisis ongoing there. But luckily, the East African community has agreed, and the African Union has endorsed the agreement to send regional troops to DRC to try and forestall the crisis. Now, on our second belt, we're dealing with situations in Nigeria, where, talking about security, Nigeria's Senate has passed a bill amending the country's Terrorism Prevention Act to bar the ransom payments. It said the amendment will prevent terrorist groups from laundering money. This comes at a time when thousands are in captivity, including passengers kidnapped during a train attack in late March near the nation's capital. With this bill, anyone who paid ransom could face up to 15 years in prison. The bill also proposes the death penalty for convicted kidnappers when the abduction leads to loss of life and life imprisonment in other instances. Now, joining me live on the conversation at this hour, we have Commodore Abimbola Ayuba, retired security risk consultant from Abuja, Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's kickstart this now. We know that the kidnap for ransom business over the years has become a lucrative enterprise in Nigeria. Now, do you believe paying a ransom has emboldened kidnappers?
Yes, of course. Payment of ransom is motivational for bandits, terrorists and whatever classification we might want to give to the criminals that permeate our national boundaries. Paying of ransom is a motivational thing that helps them to acquire more arms, weapons, and buy illicit drugs, and also pay for their communication and intelligence. So banning it is actually a very good proposition, but I'm concerned about enforcement of this bill if it eventually becomes passed to law.
Okay, why you feel that this bill will actually help solve, or rather not embolden security, because you say that paying ransom to kidnappers has emboldened them in the community. But don't you think this will infringe on the fundamental human rights of the people?
I do not think it has any impact on fundamental rights of people, because ransom payment itself is a crime, because it's like someone helping to perpetrate a crime. If most countries, most advanced countries, do not subscribe to payment of ransom for kidnapping, and of course, when it is adopted as a national policy or a national law, every citizen is bound to obey that particular law, just like any extant law that is existing at the moment. So I don't see how that will infringe on the fundamental rights of people.
All right, just hold on that talk, Commodore, as we have joined us live from Lagos, Nigeria, Dr. Monday Ubani is a human rights lawyer in Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Dr. Monday, for joining us on the conversation. And now we're dealing with this issue that the Senate has raised, of which it has amended a bill, of which was also still waiting for the lower house to discuss and deliberate on this. But the Senate right now has said that there will be a ban, that there's a ban on ransom payments, in which people who give ransom, who pay ransoms, will actually have up to 15 years imprisonment. Now, there's been a lot of for and against reactions on this. Now, do you think, because the Senate's jurisdiction there is saying that the reason why this law has been put in place is because ransom payment has emboldened kidnappers. What's your take on this? Do you feel that has emboldened criminals?
Well, I think it's a very wrong law that has just been enacted in order to ensure that lives are lost, after people have taken them for ransom. If you understand what is going on presently, there is a state of insecurity that is very worrisome. Many Nigerians have been kidnapped, and even government officials have been kidnapped, and most times they have paid ransom in order to secure their lives. Now, a government that's supposed to fight the crime of kidnapping and insecurity is now making it an offense, that if you now pay ransom, you are going to go to 15 years, spend 15 years in imprisonment. That to me does not take into cognizance the reality on ground. What I think that the government should actually strive is to ensure that there is security in the country. There is protection of lives and property, which is actually the primary responsibility of the government. Now, you have not succeeded in providing security for lives and properties. Now, you are now saying those whose lives are clearly at risk, those who have been exposed, those who have been kidnapped, that if they pay ransom in order to secure the lives of their loved ones, they're going to go to prison for 15 years. To me, it's an unreasonable law. And it is not taking into account the reality on ground. The reality on ground today is that we have state of insecurity, and lives and properties are not well protected by the state agency. So if somebody is kidnapped, and he has no other option other than to listen to what the kidnappers are demanding, because the government will not even, answer you. They will not even respond to your calls. So what do you do in the circumstance to allow these kidnappers to kill your relation or your loved ones? And somebody now sits down in order to make such a law. To me, it's a law that is clearly insensitive. It does not take into account the reality on ground. And I don't pray that any of them be a victim. I don't pray, but if they become a victim, let it be known that most times the relations will be under pressure to pay ransom in order to secure their lives. That is what I think. And I think it's a wrong wrong way, of reasoning for them to have done what they have done. I am not ignorant of the fact that the moment you begin to pay ransom, you are encouraging, kidnappers. It boosts their morale. It also strengthens them to commit more crime. I am not ignorant of that. But I think that the first thing we should address is the issue of insecurity. What is the government doing? What set of security are they providing? What are the measures they have taken to secure lives and properties within the territory, within the country? Now, if you've done that, then you can now begin to publicly criminalize the issue of ransom payment. But when lives and properties are clearly insecure and they are easily taken, by the kidnappers, you are now criminalizing those who try to secure the lives of their loved ones. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I'm not too happy with that law. It's a law that is insensitive. It's a law that lacks logic. It's a law that does not lack, that lacks wisdom. There is no wisdom in what has just been done, and I think people are not happy with that law.
Okay, Commodore, I'll go back to you now. You heard from Dr. Monday Ivan. He talked about the emotions of the people, especially when your loved one has been kidnapped and you're looking for always possible to release your loved ones. Now, Commodore, do you think there are other plausible alternative measures in securing victims or hostages from the hands of terrorists without actually paying the ransom?
It is unfortunate that at this time in our nation's history, our country has been hijacked by thousands of criminals, both from the Sahel region and even from our neighboring countries. And that means that some of the actors in our space are not Nigerian citizens. They are here to extort money, to raise funds for advancement of terrorism in their own belts, and also to increase the spectrum of terror in Nigeria. So whatever measures to be taken to deal with this gruesome crime must be taken. And I have always advocated all of society action, because in the past we keep saying all of government action sometimes is not enough. We need everybody to sit up now and address this problem. The problem of terrorism and ransom payment is just one drop in the ocean of terror. And once payment of ransom is discouraged or eliminated, which to my mind may take a while yet, we need to ensure that we begin to stop encouraging payments of ransom. I will give you examples of countries like Russia and the United States. Even in the UK, they have a policy of non-payment. It is right you might negotiate with criminals to release and free your citizens by alternate means. But what is going on?
So what alternative means do you mean, Commodore, apart from paying ransom?
Policy. It has to, every effort even the legislature is taking, we must be mindful that there are also legal luminaries in the legislature, and that people are effort to free, and the effort to do their legislative duties, they may kidnap. Every family has paid a price. It is time that we all come. Stop. It's just one of actions. There are lots of other actions that can be taken to protect Nigerians, and that the military is doing effectively. And I believe that with more support from the populace, and we will be able to save the Nigerians our society and keep the society safer and better for all of us.
All right, thank you. Now back to you, Dr. Monde Ubani. You've listed so many reasons why this bill of which to ban as payment of ransoms cannot be made possible, especially for the families who have their people being abducted or kidnapped by bandits. Now, this bill also proposes the death penalty for convicted kidnappers when the abduction leads to loss of life and life imprisonment in other instances. Now, what are your views on the institution of repentant bandits? Because a lot of people also condemn the fact that even if these bandits have repented, they still need to face the law. What is your view on that?
I agree that even if they repented or they repent from their crime, they ought to face penalty in order to act as a deterrent. I see no reason why somebody has killed or have committed all manner of atrocities, and the next thing he tells you that he has repented, and then you are now, making him to be part of the society, and you are forgiving him all the atrocities he has committed. What stop the next person, to commit the same crime and then say that he has repented and then be forgiven? I think that the best thing to do in order to create a deterrent effect to crime is to ensure that those who commit crime are punished. So I don't believe in wholesome forgiveness of any person who has committed crime. Let's even assume that this person has committed a crime and let there be a conviction, and then you can grant what is called amnesty. But a situation where they are not allowed to undergo a process of trial and prosecution, and you say you have given them wholesale forgiveness or amnesty, blanket amnesty without trial, without being convicted, is something that I think is not helping the fight against insecurity. I think that the best thing the government can do is to make sure that those who are caught, those who are involved in crime, either in banditry or who are terrorists, are punished for the crime they have committed against humanity. That is the way to deter, others from committing that crime. So I don't believe in this issue of government granting wholesale amnesty when they have not even undergone a process of trial. Most times they are just being, given that blanket, and then reabsorbed into the military and reabsorbed into the society. And that's why we're having a recurring, state of insecurity, because we are not getting solution. How many years now we've been fighting insecurity in this country? How much billions have we wasted in terms of budgeting to fight insecurity? And we're not seeing results because the method and methodology we are using is not creating, getting us the result we require. And they come up with the policy of wholesome forgiveness, and then they are integrated into the society. And we are not getting results in eliminating the state of insecurity all over, especially in the northern region of the country. So I am of the view that those who commit crime must be made to face the law. That is the way to deter others.
Okay, facing the law. Now, you talk about methods. We also know that intelligence gathering is key in any parastatal. Now, the NSA some days back, we saw him appeal to the wider society to provide the necessary intelligence, especially we see insecurity happening in the rural areas. So how best do you think security agencies can go about this? And will the lives of the people who provide such information be safeguarded?
And the guest speaker also from Abuja was talking about strangers coming into the country. What are we doing to police our borders? What is the government policy about policing our borders? Why are they allowing strangers from Tripoli? I'm talking about Libya and other countries to stray into the country and then commit crime and get out of the country. What is the policy of government on policing our borders? That is the first thing we should be talking about. I also agree with you on the issue of intelligence gathering. There should be top level intelligence gathering at the rural areas, because the rural areas are prone to attack. And most of the killings that are taking place in all the states are the rural areas. What is the level of effective control and monitoring and policing of those rural areas? And what level of intelligence is available to the security agents in order to ensure that those things do not repeat? So if we don't do these things, and our borders are porous, our local government are porous, everywhere is porous, and the local governments are not properly policed, the states are not policed, the country will become unsafe. And that's why we are still to get any result, effective result on the issue of fight against insecurity up to now. I mean, this thing started how many years ago? And if you see how many trillions we have wasted on insecurity, yet we are not getting the effective result we ought to get because the strategy that had been adopted is clearly faulty. And I think we should start from the beginning. Get our borders to be properly policed. Get our census, right. Let us know who are Nigerians and those who are not Nigerians. And those who are coming into the country, what are they coming to do? And what is their status? Are they coming to stay for 1 month, after which they have to exit, failing which they have to be arrested? And that's how it's been done in developed economies. You don't just go into England and probably with your visa, even if for 6 months and you stay and then you be walking about in Britain without being caught. When they catch you, they ask you, why are you here? And they look at your visa. They look at your status. You are not a citizen of Britain. Then what are you doing here with a visa that is expired? They deport you. So Nigeria is not doing all that. We allow all manner of persons to come into the country who are not Nigerians, who they use sometimes for political purposes in electing office holders in Nigeria. And it's easy for you to get Nigerian passport because of the fact that the borders are very porous. So I think we have to start from the fundamental. Let's really get it right with policing our borders. Let's get it right with knowing who are Nigerians and those who are not Nigerians. And then let's get our top-level security agency to be involved in security, intelligence gathering, in order to know those who are infiltrated, those who are coming to attack, when they will want to attack. And I think that we should do all that, using even our technology, issue of phone. Everyone now is registered. You can monitor phone and know those who are using phone to commit crime and know how to nip it in the bud. So I don't know, honestly, I'm a lawyer, but I know we can do better than what we're doing presently. And the state of insecurity is so scary that no one sleeps with his 2 eyes closed. And the country is not getting it right with issue of investors coming into the country, because the kind of news out there is that Nigeria is clearly unsafe. And nobody wants to come and invest in a country where there is, there's no safety and all that. So it's affecting the economy. It's affecting us politically. It's also affecting our development. It's affecting our progress as a nation. So I think these people who are in charge of Nigeria must begin to put on their thinking cap and probably come with a more effective means of intelligence gathering and securing Nigeria and securing their properties and all that. It's very important.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Monday. I'll bring in Commodore Abimbola right now. We're looking at the way forward, and Dr. Monday hinged on the issue of technology. And you must agree that there's been a lot of clamor that the security architecture in Nigeria needs to be advanced. Do you think the federal government is doing enough? Because we've heard series of reports about Tucano jets, surveillance cameras, but do you feel that it has actually been used, or that the federal government is doing enough to advance the technology apparatus of the security architecture?
Well, it is, thank you very much for that question. It is important to also understand that the application of technology, particularly those equipments that have military application, are being deployed right now in almost all the theaters of operation. And technology is indeed being used, but also we must understand that there are some level of technology that will require a lot of international cooperation from other technologically advanced countries that have very huge satellite footprints across the world. Where the technology available right now is unable to deal effectively with the issue of terrorism, I would simply advocate that the government should begin to look for how to form alliances and coalitions, genuine alliances and coalitions, where we can get foreign partners, or indeed outsource this to defense contractors who can easily access such technology. That's the way we should go right now. But I know that the government is doing its bit. It might be, efforts might be far between, but a lot needs to be done to get us to that level of technology that we can use to monitor our borders, and including internal spaces, especially the ungoverned spaces in the country.
All right, thank you so much, Commodore Abimbola Ayuba, for joining us on the conversation. He's a security risk consultant in Abuja, Nigeria. We also had with us Dr. Monday Ubani, a human rights lawyer in Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much for discussing these issues, especially on the way forward away from insecurity in Nigeria. Thank you. And that's how we call it a wrap on today's edition of The Conversation. On the first half, we dealt with situations in DR Congo, where there's been scrutiny against the state of emergency imposed by the president, Felix Tshisekedi. And of course, we've seen a series of human rights violations going on in DRC. But we do hope that the East African community will do its best to forestall further attacks. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the Senate has passed a bill amending the country's Terrorism Prevention Act, which will bar payment of ransom for kidnapped victims. Well, this has caused lots of reactions in Nigeria, and we had our guests who analyzed the issues with us, but we do hope that the federal government does enough to curb insecurity, especially in the regional and northwestern part of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on The Conversation. Do join us again next week. I am Rita Omodia.